Hi guys, it's Barry. Um, Wanted to address another question that's coming in a lot more regularly now, and one I haven't got a firm answer for. Uh, we're getting asked a lot, why are you guys so sure that that's the right place to best weather out the storm? And the truth of the answer to that question is I don't think anybody can say anything's for sure. Especially me. I don't know. All I can say is I'm fairly well traveled, and none of you that are watching this YouTube, if you haven't started your cut no cut list, as I like to call it, oh, I'd say at least 8 years ago, I don't think you have the time to do the research that we did. So while I can't and I don't see anybody that can assure anybody of anything. Here's what I can tell you. Demographics played a part of it because we could, if we wanted to, board a plane, the early plane that leaves Puerto Plata, and Leanne, my wife, could be in Timmins, Ontario by 6 o'clock that same day. So demographics played a big part of it. A lot of the other countries we considered were considerably farther away. So that was one point. Another point we wanted was a country that is about as self-sufficient as possible. I can tell you, because of the mountainous terrain here, the highest peak breaks 10,000 vertical feet. So it gives us an abundance of vegetables and fruits due to the change of climate. I know as close we are to the equator, most people can't accept the fact parts of this country do actually freeze overnight in the wintertime, where the puddles will actually ice up and they'll melt the next day. So with that kind of variety variety in climate, it does yield an absorbent amount of different fruits and vegetables. I believe, don't quote me, but I believe in total there's 72 different fruits and vegetables that do grow in this country. We also wanted a country that was big into agriculture. And the percentages of family here that's into agriculture, of course tourism would be the first, but agriculture's right up there. The percentages are high of people that work on farm, have family who work on farm, or actually own farm or are invested in farming. That was another big thing for me, because I know that's what triggers off a lot of serious revolution is food. And I wanted an area or a region of the country that isn't overly populated, and that does yield an abundance of food. Actually, just a footnote here, in our region, most of the stuff, local stuff, because we buy a lot of local stuff, but most of the local stuff does come in 3 times a week on these rickety old farm trucks, and half the time it's still on donkey drawn cart. Our fish comes in from less than 3 miles away from little wooden boats that run a little 9.9 or a 15-horse kicker. But if fuel should be a problem, each one of those little old wooden boats is equipped with a sail. So the fish is local. We have excellent beef. For those of you who enjoy beef, but I'd say Brahma is our best beef here. Tremendous amounts of dairy cow, pork, chicken is all over the place, including most people that really want to become part of the culture actually start raising their own chickens. It really is easy to do, and Leanne's a master of that. But we also wanted a country that wasn't exclusively dependent on oil coming out of the Mideast because of the turmoil that's there. And our oil comes out from Venezuela. I'm sure a lot of you already know that. And some of the other factors would be a very content population, The abundance, while crime is everywhere in every country, the abundance, or by vast majority, the abundance of violent crime is in the three biggest cities, which would be Santo Domingo, Santiago, and San Francisco de Macorís. Those are the three biggest cities of this country. As you venture away from those into the more rural areas, crime drops tremendously. I also was looking for a country that couldn't freeze. I know a lot of people underestimate that, but I would caution you not to do that, because if ever there's any grid destruction, and that's where I really believe most of the, besides the internal violence from people that are used to programs and psychotropic drugs that no longer, are available, should the, the poop hit the blades. Well, those that are in northern countries might be a little a little more surprised than they think should there be any kind of grid failures. Think about what would happen about that, and the rest of that should be self-explanatory. We also want to make it clear, I should say I do, as I pulled over here to have this, to answer this question while I was thinking of my answer. Nobody can guarantee anything, and I want to give you a great example of what I mean by that. Pre-World War II, a lot of folks, when I was an underwater photographer, I did spend a fair amount of time in Micronesia, in that area of the South Pacific. And I did get to, on my days off, film a lot of war wreckage and tanks and pillboxes and buildings that are still there, although most of it's covered in growth. It's still there, and I was fortunate to really put together a nice slide portfolio of that for my own personal collection. But in any event, a large part of Europe thought they were going to escape the violence of World War II when it was apparent what Germany was going to be doing. And a lot of them fled to the areas of Micronesia. They had the concept that what could really happen out here in this quiet, remote little chain of islands? I mean, there's no value here to anybody. It's got some food, and we're going to vacate to there. Well, as history will dictate, you had the Great American Turkey Shoot, which was in Chuk is the real name, but people call it Truck Lagoon. I happen to have been hired to film the Maru fleet that's underwater there twice, and there was a tremendous amount of fighting there. There was also Palileo. There was also Midway. Everyone's heard of that famous movie, The Island of Midway. And Orange Beach battle took there, Orange Bloody Beach. It was Orange Beach because the water was so full of blood, it became orange, an orangey tinge. So you see, all those people that kind of wanted to vacate from it, when there's so many black swans swimming in the pond, things can take a turn in any direction at almost any time. And this is the reason why I state as I do that flexibility should be your first and foremost rule of any plan B. Being able to switch on the fly with little to no deviation of your end goal. And that takes some thinking. So, while no place is going to be perfect, this particular country, along with Chile, Colombia, which has gotten a bad rap for no real reason. That was all the kidnappings and what have you. That really had little to nothing to do with expats. But, the fear porn likes to get that out there and keep people glued. But I hope this kind of answers it, because there's nobody that can guarantee you anything. However, the research that we've done, along with a few others, dictate that certain countries should survive with far fewer problems than others. So I hope this kind of gives you some reason why we chose here and what we were looking for as a place to live. long before the thought of really, I believe the term is bugging out or bug out, long before people were looking for plan Bs to bug out and things like this, we were in these countries. But our original reason was what I had mentioned, because I started to catch on to this quite seriously in late 84, early 85. So I really want to assure all of my subscribers and viewers, here we are in 2016, and if your friends and family are calling you an idiot for what you're thinking, can you imagine the flack I took back in the 80s? Now think about what I'm saying here. Mom didn't have to work. It wasn't a two-salary family back then. Detroit was Motor City. Besides Motown, it was Motor City. There was nothing to really say Toyota, Datsun, Kia, any of these other popular manufacturers, Yamaha, all of these things. It was Johnson, Evinrude, and Mercury. It was not Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda. If I was adding up the numbers back then and figuring out this is unsustainable, you can't imagine what I was called, okay? So use that as a little bit of cushion when people give you a hard time about thinking about an alternative plan B, because I can assure you, you're on the right track, and it's much better to have it and not need it than need it and start thinking about it after the wave crashes. Another one or two footnotes I'd like to mention is our region has approximately 100 plus years of aquifer below the surface. A large majority of our water in our region is still gravity fed. Actually, my house is completely gravity fed with no pump required. I actually had to put in a little restrictor to bring it down about 15 psi. So, should be one of the most important things on everybody's list is water, and our region is holding quite well with that. That's something that a lot of people tend to overlook. And as far as electrical grid, solar power is really big here, and the next and final little house we're going to put together here is going to be totally off-grid with solar power. Every house here is also equipped with inverters and backup battery systems. So, it kind of makes a lot of us laugh here if the power goes out for 3 minutes in a place, how everybody's running around and the newspapers calling it a panic and trying to analyze, was it sabotage, was it again with the fear porn, I guess. But I mean, we're so used to living with that, and we're so used to protecting ourselves from that with backup, which we say inverter, but I believe the English word is inverter, and deep cycle battery system. So when the power goes off every day, the inverter kicks over in a millisecond. Most of the time you wouldn't even lose an internet connection. That's how quick it is. And if your house is properly equipped, your battery backup, everything is functional. So you have power 24 hours a day. A lot of the horror stories I hear about power in this country, a lot of it when I walk into these particular homes are so misfitted with a proper source of equipment, it's pathetic. It would be kind of like trying to drive a slick tire across a snowstorm. It just isn't going to happen. And I've noticed that. So by and large, it's really not bad. Internet connection, I wanted a country that has good internet connection. We're running 5 bar all the time, so we're not TV watchers, but people tell us if they watch a movie or something, you don't get that little wheel spinning. They can watch a movie from beginning to end with no interruption. I do know several of the families here, a few that we've actually relocated, do depend on internet for their livelihood, and they've been okay. They haven't had any major problem with it. So I would tend to say the internet's adequate. I do know in the whole region of the North Coast, they already are laying the underground cable for underground fiber optic. So that's also a step in the right direction. We get a lot of questions about, is this available, is that available? Um, all I could say is, let me tell you something. When I first came here about almost 20 years ago, okay, things were a lot different. Now, as far as food, we have a huge amount. I believe the managers tell me it's between 70 and 80% of what Europe has, which is very low GMO, mind you. We have almost 100% of what US has, which we try to avoid buying because of the GMO. And we have everything that this country has. So when you go into the larger cities, like where we like to shop, we go every 8 weeks to Santiago and stock up on the things we don't get in our local region. And because we have a little deep freezer. And the variety of groceries, when I do take people into Santiago for the first or second time, several of them are actually blown away. Like, you want cheese from Germany or Switzerland, chocolate from Europe, or just about anything you can imagine. We've got variety here. As far as clothes shopping and as far as things of that nature in the bigger cities also, there's everything. Personally, for me though, I like to once or twice a year buy a set of shirts and a few sets of pants or shorts, and mostly. But I do like Docker, and I do like one other brand I can't even remember. I think it's called Polo, because of how it fits my shoulders and things. Yeah, I think it's Polo. Anyway, there's websites, like one example I'll give you is after6pm.com. Okay, it's PM. It's important you put that in because there's also an after 6. After6pm.com. And when you live in these countries, you set up a PO box in America through a company. We choose to use Aeropost. They ship like millions of packages a month. Extremely reasonable. It's like $7.80 a pound to ship international, and you get it within 6 days. Everything's tracked on the internet. You can find out where your package is at any point in time, and it lets you know that the next day it'll be in the Aeropost office in Cabrera. That's all of 5 minutes from my house, and you even get an email reminding you it's there. And it just doesn't get easier. I mean, just even a decade ago, none of this was like it is now. So when folks, and I appreciate the questions, I really want to get that across. I do appreciate them. But when folks ask, is it hard to get things or is it hard to survive? Well, that too is by personal experience, as I mentioned in a previous YouTube. For someone like me, when I was younger, that was used to being in New Guinea and places like this and surviving, this is a cakewalk. It used to be, I would say, but if you're from somewhere where you're used to having everything every beck and call, well, right now I think you'd be really surprised. The question is, I don't see how you cannot find it easy in this country, as well as countries like I say, Chile and Ecuador. The internet has made things completely different. So continuing on now, these are just a little sidebar of a few more of the reasons why we ended up feeling this was the best choice for us. So I hope this helps. Keep those questions coming in, because it's the only way we're going to be able to address all the areas of interest, I guess you would say, that all you guys have out there. Really appreciate them. And I'm glad our message is getting out. Okay, so until next time, this is Barry and DR. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.